Takes like 7 to 8 seconds. We're live.
Okay, good evening. It is May 13th, 2024. I'm Linda Stone, and I'm chairing the special Finance Committee meeting this evening. And I apologize for having started this meeting a little later than scheduled. And we're going to take roll call to my left.
Yota Pali School Board,
Tracy Oseki, School Board.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Matt Frederickson, IT Director.
Ann Horner, School Board.
Tony Rapp, Director of Business Administration.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Bob Hickey, School Board.
Is there anyone online on the phones?
Nicole Cohen, School Board.
Thank you. Can you add Nicole? All right. So I will pass the baton over to Tony Rapp. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. So the Finance Committee meeting tonight is about the budget, special meeting to talk about the budget for next year, 24-25. Our agenda tonight is on the proposed final general fund budget, a review of budget details, revenue details, expenditure details, the full budget, the tax rebate, and where do we go from here, okay? Just want to say I'm a little bit further behind than I wanted to be. We had some problems with the system not calculating one of the payroll budgets right. We fixed it, and these numbers are up to the minute last budget numbers, but I do not have a function breakdown for you tonight. But I will have a budget book with that for you by Thursday at the regular board meeting. That also prevents me from presenting a comparison tonight because I don't have those numbers to put into the software that we use to do the projected fund.
are you planning to present them on Thursday or just give them to us?
I was going to talk about that maybe because we have the forum yet, and then also if you wanted to have another budget meeting once I have those, and find, with some more
Detail.
So just going over things that we've talked about before, this budget includes a school resource officer in each middle school. That's an addition from last year. Maintains the same rates for health insurance in 24-25. That is now set in stone as far as our healthcare plan. We were recommended to increase our premium rates for both the school, but both the district and the employees by about 13%. Because of the amount in our fund balance, we are recommending that we do not do that. Hopefully that'll use about $2 million worth of fund balance in the healthcare fund, which is the only place that we pull that from. It does, however, does not mean that most of the employees will not get an increase in premiums because the contracts call for, the bargaining unit contracts call for their percentage of the total premium to increase. So the district's premium will actually decrease by a little bit and their premium will increase by a little bit, but the total premium remains the same. Does that make sense?
When you said the district's premium, you mean?
So the way it works is there's a premium amount that gets paid into the healthcare fund every year for each employee. Some of the contracts call for that, so there's a percent of that. So say there's $100 that goes into that for each person every year. So this year they might be paying $17 and we're paying the other $83. Next year it might be that they're paying $18 and we're paying the extra $82. So ours goes down by $1, theirs goes up by $1.
Can you explain again about the fund balance that?
So our healthcare fund, the way we do healthcare is we're self-funded. So when we take premiums that the district pays and that the employees pay, that money is moved into what's called the healthcare fund, Fund 60. Then the money from that fund is used to pay the administrative costs of the plan. It's used to pay the healthcare costs, any actual healthcare costs that come up. And then that includes, prescription drugs and anything related to the medical plan. That's usually they try to figure out what our premiums are what amount of the claims are gonna cost us for the year, and then use that are gonna cost the district for the year. We know what our claims are expected to be, and then the premiums are divided up into paying for those. The premiums are set to match those costs. So the total premiums that the employees and employer pay into that fund is set to match the cost. So what happens though is if the amount that they're saying that our consultant tells us we should expect to pay in healthcare next year ends up being lower than they predicted, we end up with excess funds. And we are at the point where we're at about $29 million of excess funds in that fund. So last year, we didn't raise the premiums, even though it was recommended to raise the premiums. We left it the same. It did the same thing where the employee share increased, the employee share increased, the employer share decreased. And we'll do the same thing next year. It didn't have it doesn't look like, unless there's some major claims coming, it doesn't look like it had the effect that we hoped it would have, and that it reduced that fund balance by $1 million. So we're doing the same thing again this year, with the plan that's hopefully that will reduce the fund balance. So we're basically saying we're paying less into that fund than we should because of what we expect healthcare claims to be.
Can I ask a quick question? What is does that percentage that the employee pays, is it the same percentage of the premium that the employee pays for family, or?
No.
So.
Well, no, I'm sorry, it is the same percentage. It is the same percentage of the premium, but obviously if you have a family, the premium for is higher.
Of course, the dollar amount is,
Right.
but some companies will pay a big percentage for the employee, but the employee has to foot most of the bill for the family. I was asking, you're saying, no.
It's the same no matter what.
The percentage is
The same.
constant, okay,
That does not change.
okay.
And those are negotiated in the contracts. Okay. It also converts, so we have technology integration specialists. They've been paid under a grant and under the federal ESSER money from COVID. They're very valuable positions in that they help bring technology into the classrooms, make sure that everything's working right. There's a lot that they do. Because that money has run out, we are moving them into regular, and so they're not being funded by grant money anymore, but we would like to keep those positions. We do use the 23-24 amounts for state funding, which is basically what we're promised we're gonna get this year. Yes, part of the conservative budget that we talked about, we don't wanna make it higher. We have no idea when the budget's gonna be passed. We have no idea what it's gonna come in at. And I will say that our share of at least not the basic education numbers, is the lowest increase. They're predicting for us the lowest increase that I've seen in 4 years. So we don't want to mess with the state funding numbers. We did add a reserve of $500,000. That's $500,000. It's not budgeted to any specific item, but should something come up that we don't have budgeted that we need to spend money on, we have that available. Also, if something ends up being more, we end up spending something on a budgeted item that was more than we anticipated, we have money to move into that budgeted item from the reserve. If the reserve doesn't get spent, then it just gets removed from the final amounts. The The budget does include $72,180 from a state English language development grant for Ukrainian students. And the original grant was about $120,000, but we do have to get that, it has to be spent about halfway through the year, through the school year. And we did begin a process this year of funding district-wide initiatives through the central office budget, because the schools have they have a building budget for their non-salary and benefit budget that is based on enrollment. And it's worked where if there was something that was district-wide, they were often expected to use their building budget for that. And we're trying to keep that out of the building budgets and put that into the central administrator's budgets, so that they're not affected by district-wide changes.
Quick question, Mr. Rep. Do we have, and this is probably a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but we have more than 5 or so ELD students?
Yes.
So the state is about funding roughly for 5 with this grant, because they're, or less, right?
And their special education too.
Right, yeah.
So we have north of 400 ELD students. This grant is specific to Ukrainian ELD students. And as Tony said, that the total number of that was a little higher. This is what we're able to have released, and we have to use, spend it down for Ukrainian ELD students midway through the school year.
We have more than 5 from Ukraine.
Yes.
But the grant is written to supplement their
Yeah,
education, not to
yep,
pay for them.
yep.
So we brought this up last budget meeting. We'd like to add some additional budgeted positions. These would be permanent positions that come out of the budget every year. There's the supervisor of curriculum and instruction for special education, 2 ELD specialists, again for that development program, STEAM teacher, another math specialist to put a math specialist in each school, a data analyst for parsing the data and analyzing it for the district, a human resources supervisor, an endpoint technician for IT, and 2 middle school home monitors. And again, these would be permanent budgeted positions. And then we also have it's actually 4 positions, two of each, of additional educational initiatives positions. So these are, we'd like to use in 24-25 some additional educational initiative fund balance funding to try these 2 different types of positions. 2 teachers on special assignment to help with working in a couple of the elementary schools, and 2 assistant athletic directors to work, 1 for each high school, to help with the workload of the current assistant principals / athletic directors.
So just to clarify, so this is from the already existing budget of educational initiatives? These are not going to be things that we try them out.
We're going to try them out, and if
And then
they
if we
work,
like them, then they can go into the
then they would
budget.
become permanent the following year. So we're not spending current resources, or I shouldn't say current, but we're not spending resources on these
Tax increase
for
on that.
taxes that we're using this year.
Thank you.
We recommended real estate tax increases for 4 different purposes. 1 for additional budgeted positions that we talked about earlier, of 0.5668% for a total amount of $1,001,879. A deficit reduction increase of 0.5% for a dollar amount of $883,725. A full-day kindergarten, half of the tax increase needed for full-day kindergarten of 0.57%, $1,007,879 amount, and a debt service, so we can start looking at our ability to pay down and take out future debt, a 1% tax increase of $1,767,450. That's total percentage increase of 2.6368 for a total dollar amount of $4,669,33. And just a home with an average assessed value of $45,967 would pay an additional $166, that's per year. And again, I talked about the use of the educational initiatives fund balance for those 4 positions that I talked about on the last slide. That would be $385,210.
Could you remind me what is the deficit reduction, 0.5%?
That's basically our cost of living adjustment for a tax increase to keep up with the current cost increases. So that's, our salaries go up by contract, our ADM contract increases, our transportation contract increases. So that's to keep up with that. Keep up with those increases.
Okay, and the new positions are the 0.56.
The new positions are 0.5668. So those are I showed you the budgeted positions, and then I showed you the use of educational initiatives. So that's for the budgeted positions. That's the cost of those budgeted positions.
Thank you.
Can I welcome Ed Tate
Thank you.
to our meeting?
Very
Thank you. Okay, oh, and I had one other question that was brought up at the last meeting regarding the amount of rent that we're receiving from Champions. Did we get to look at that? Because I don't know if it's impacting these numbers or not impacting. Because that would fall under the full-day kindergarten piece. But we can go on,
All right, we can come back to that then.
come back to it.
Mr. Hidalgo had asked, Joe, you're not there, are you? Okay, good.
No.
He had requested that I ask a question, and I'm not sure if this is the right opportunity or place, but I'm gonna ask it anyway, since he asked me. He said when we talked about the teacher salaries for full-day kindergarten, that we used a starting teacher salary with benefits for that number. Joe would like to know, if possible, and obviously not now, what that number would be for a teacher at the other end of the scale. What that number would be, that impact would be for full-day kindergarten.
Okay. Okay, I'll look into that.
All right, we're going to move on.
May I go answer your question, Ms.
Oh.
Stone?
Okay,
So regarding Champions, a cost share agreement with Champions, and the district realizes 18% gross revenue share. Champions in the last 5 years, in the school year 2020, Council Rock realized $113,370.44. School year 21, $33,468.75. School year 2022, $145,307.26. School year 23, $212,775.61.
so are you saying that 212,000 in '23 was the amount of money we were,
That was our share of
Netting?
the cost share, yes.
Can
yes?
Can you break it down further? Because some of the champions, a lot of the champions are before and after school, not kindergarten, wouldn't be affected by this.
I can break it down, I don't have that right now, but I'm happy to get that.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So you're saying, though, that these numbers are what we would lose if we no longer had champions. Is that what you're trying to say?
Possibly.
Possibly, to Mrs. Oseki's question, there's a differential between the
Between
enrichment.
before and after.
Right.
But would that still be possible? The champions programs for before and after school?
Yeah, that
Could
would,
you
yeah.
do that after school in a kindergarten room if it's still a full
it's
day
usually
kindergarten?
it's in the gym or the cafeteria, before and after school.
Well, that would be something interesting to find out if champions would still want to use our facilities before and after school with the full day kindergarten change.
Well, they're in all 10 elementaries before and after school, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
champions.
and they
the other
K
pieces
it's
are-
K through 6.
And all
Yeah.
grades.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And just add to that comment, I think we can't really make any assumption until we know the difference between before and after school care and those that come for full day kindergarten, correct?
right. But it's not we're not looking at $1 million that we're losing even, right?
That would be the maximum that, and it's
200,000 would be the
anywhere
most
close
that
to
we'd be
that, yeah.
losing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't look at it as very impactful.
Yeah. But
Okay, go for it, Tony. Sorry.
So this is why I gave you the handout. This is our local revenue budget for next year, and you can see we show the 21-22 actual, the 22-23 actual. Last year, this year's budget and next year's recommended budget. And we show you the increase, decrease for each revenue item, and the percentage increase. So, current real estate, tax increase, I'll highlight the major ones. It's $5,291,641. That includes the $4 million that I talked about earlier. It also includes, our assessed value did increase significantly from last year, so that's another reason why our total assessed value in the district did increase, so that's another reason why it went up more than that amount. It's actually, you'll see it when I get to the state revenue. Our state, the amount we get from the state to provide real estate tax reduction to people with homestead properties increased by about $1.5 million. So technically, that's another $1.5 million increase in this budget for real estate taxes, because we actually have over $8 million that are gonna get split up among all the homestead people, and then they each get the same share of that reduction. Interim real estate taxes increased, 126,000. Our collections on those have been getting better. There's also been a lot of development, and as the assessed value goes up, development increases, so we've been increasing the amount that we've been getting from that. We had 180 we had 600,000 budgeted last year. We've been pulling in a lot more than we've been budgeting for those because of the development. PERTA and pilot payment in lieu of taxes are both state set. The local services tax has a slight increase. Earned income tax, that's one that's really tough to budget. We'll probably do better than $1 million going into next year, but conservatively budgeting, $1 million is about as high as I would like to go for an increase in that budget. Occupation assessment tax, that's kind of a stagnant tax, $57,919, and that's mostly due to better collection efforts with the third party that collects those taxes. Transfer tax, again, development and sale of homes has been increasing, so we're predicting that's gonna increase a little bit next year. Delinquent real estate tax, we leave flat. Other delinquent taxes, we do pretty well with delinquent earned income taxes. So that we did increase a little bit. earnings on investment, as you know, we've been doing much better than we have in the past. We have budgeted last year $3 million. I worked with Kevin Carpuck to decide what that increase should be for this year. $5,500,000. Between he and I, we think that's a reasonable budget number for next year. So that's an additional $2.5 million in the budget for an increase of 83%. So, and we've done a lot of work to maximize our return on investment in the markets. We've been watching it like a hawk. We've been keeping money in as long as the funds in those investments as long as we can before we spend them. So it's been paying off for the district. And the rest of the local revenues, athletic receipts have, I think we've been over budgeting that, so we decreased the budget on that. Idea funding usually remains the same. That is actually federal money, but it's passed through the intermediate unit, so we call it a local revenue. But that is for special education. Facility rentals, status quo, tuition from patrons. That was money we were getting for a student who was from another school district that was in our Achieve program, and they've aged out, so we will no longer be getting that money. Summer school tuition, that's usually, fluctuates a little bit, so we kept that the same. Most of the other things on here, contributions and donations, we did not budget that last year, but we did add $45,000 because that's been pretty steady. And miscellaneous revenue, we moved that up to $55,132. That's what we've been collecting on miscellaneous revenue. So that's a total increase of $9,331,976 for a 4.54% increase.
May I?
Ed had a question.
I'm curious about the community services line item. I don't know what, revenue from community services.
That's basically services that things that we're providing in the community that services to other. It's been pretty steady at that 250 to 227 amount.
Okay,
So I can give you better answers for that. It's just not.
just curiosity.
Yeah. I will get you a better answer for that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So
That's
that-
fine. Thank you.
This is our total for the local revenue.
This is our total for local revenue.
And now we move on.
So the state revenue, again, most of these are budgeted based on this year's numbers. So we're predicted by the end of this year to get $17,060,361 in basic education. So that's an increase of $1,057,815 over last year's amount, which was the 22-23 amount that we received. A lot of these are just status quo. A special education subsidy, again, that's what we received last year, or what we're expected to receive this year based on I'm pretty confident that that's what we'll receive. So that's an increase of $74,000. The other state grants is the Ukrainian grant that we spoke about earlier. That was not budgeted last year, so any money that we received was unexpected as far as the budget was concerned, but we did add that to the budget this year. Rental reimbursement, that is based on our debt and money that we get from the state to pay our debt. And we are able to calculate that based on the agreements that we have for rental reimbursement. That's expected to decrease by $397,000. The state property reduction funds, an increase of $1,451,769. That's not really revenue to the district. That is revenue to our taxpayer, our real estate taxpayers, because that just we just reduce our real estate tax expected revenue by that amount, and then so it's just basically moving some local revenue into state revenue, but otherwise there's no net gain for the district on that revenue. Social Security and state retirement reimbursement are both expected to increase. Those numbers we calculate those numbers on the budget based upon our salaries and our expected Social Security and our expected retirement. It's supposed to be half. It's usually a little less than half because there are reasons why people, some things are excluded from that reimbursement. It's usually about 49.8%. 49.08%, I'm sorry, that we budget those at. And so the total budget of state revenue is $60,770,414, an increase of $3,597,932, or a 6.29% increase. Again, the majority of that is, or a big part of that is the state property reduction amount, which is not really an increase to the district. The federal revenue budget, I'm sorry, anybody have any questions on that?
I actually do have one. I totally don't understand rental reimbursement.
Yes.
Is there an example?
So the way it works is, so we take out debt for a construction project, and the program is no longer active. So what would happen is, you would take out debt to fix a school, or to renovate a school or build a school. When you do that, when you did that, the state would say, okay, we collect these rental reimbursements or whatever, we collect these, and we will pay you this certain amount to help you pay your debt for that project. And so we know what those amounts are. We have debt that is the premium amounts are coming down, so we're paying less on those amounts, so that's why our rental reimbursements are decreasing on those. Okay.
Seems like there should be a better way of calling it than rental reimbursements, but, okay.
Well, yeah, sure, there's a PERTA tax, it's nothing to do with, I forget what it stands for, but what it is, we get money from the state for it, but it doesn't,
As long as they send the money, we'll take it.
well, that's true.
Okay.
So federal revenue, as you can see, this is mostly stagnant. We budget these based on what we received last year. The only one that changes is the ESSER funding, because as you all know, that ran out. So we have spent all our funds, so we have no ESSER funding next year. So we do have a decrease of $1 million, which is what we had budgeted last year. So the total revenue budget, you can see, is $277,474,219, an increase of $11,929,908 for a 4.49% increase over last year's budget. So the expenditure budget. These budget numbers are grouped by object, so this is by the type of expenditure that they are. As I said, when we have the budget book and have more detailed information, you'll see them broken out by building, by school building, by most of these other categories, but you see them broken out by school building and by some of the programs that are not based in a building. So our salaries have increased by almost $3 million in the budget, and these are, we look at the contracts, what those expected. We look at every employee. We calculate what their rate should be for next year, and based on the contracts, and budget for their salary. We also look at everyone who's retiring and the replacement cost of that employee, so that would be a reduction in this amount spent. We also look at that's also some new positions that are in there as well. So the total is almost $3 million for an increase of 2.53%. So that's our expected salary increase. Employee benefit costs will increase by $1,635,375. A large portion of that increase is the PSERS and the retirement, and we pay 33.9% of retirement salary into retirement. We pay 7.65% of salary into Social Security. So a lot of that is increased because of that. And as I said, the premiums for healthcare for the employees did go up a little bit, but for us, they kind of stayed the same. They go down a little bit, but it's not significant to the district. Purchase professional technical services. So those are services in the schools that we purchase, such as, money that we spend in the IU, we pay the IU to do that. So there's a lot of special education money in there. Any professional that we come in to help would come out of this category of expenditures. Purchase property services are services that we use to, basically anything related to property that we pay somebody to plow the snow, or anything outside that we don't do. Also, things like our maintenance contracts are in there. So we pay a contractor to come in every month and look at our equipment and make sure it's working right in the boiler room. That's what comes out of there. That's another, and most of these increases are cost of living type increases. Other purchase services then are things like our Durham contract and our ABM contract for transportation and for cleaning. That increase is a contracted increase. The supplies actually decreased, but the only reason that that's decreased is because we made a large purchase of a new reading system last year. So, and that was in supply. So that's why it's decreased, because we don't have a large purchase like that in the current year. But we do still have some amount that we're obviously we're still buying some new textbooks, and we still are spending money on the new reading. So that's why that decreased a little bit. Property is, again, different areas around, like any type of not in-house construction, any type of construction we do that's not in-house construction that we do that's not
A renovation?
I'm sorry?
That it's not a renovation?
Yeah, that's not a renovation. That's not coming out of the capital reserve fund.
Yeah.
Sorry. Other objects are smaller items like the real estate tax rebate is budgeted in there. That's $250,000. Other things that don't have a specific category. The transfer to capital reserve fund, we don't have anything budgeted for that, but the last time that we did that was in 21-22, 23.5 or $23.6 million. The transfer to debt service funds is been steady for the last 3 years. We budgeted and spend that amount. That's that 1.0% tax increase I'm recommending to pay for that. So that would be an additional $1,767,450 transferred in the debt service next year, an increase of 9.42%. Transfers to food service fund, we're budgeting the same as last year, $150,000. Hopefully we won't need that with the changes that we made in food service, where we're using the money in the fund to pay, the high school money that we earn in food service to pay for the things we would normally transfer from the general fund. And the last expenditure item is the budgetary reserve of $500,000. So our total expenditures are $279,317,215, an increase of $11,340,063, or a 4.38% increase. exciting stuff.
Yeah, no, if I may, I just
Go ahead, Ed.
wanted to note that 2.21% increase in employee benefits is really amazing. That's a low figure.
You missed the whole explanation.
So it doesn't look, so if you recall from last year, we budgeted to try to spend some of the healthcare fund balance down, so we kept premiums the same. It doesn't look like it's gonna decrease again this year, so we're keeping premiums again the same. Our consultant had said that normally they would recommend a 13% increase in premiums. We're not going to do that because we need to try to use some of that fund balance.
Okay.
And that fund balance is pretty high.
Yeah, about 29 million,
Yeah, I remember.
so.
So can you compare this, oh, go ahead, you're doing the budget summary next, right? The next slide.
Yeah. So the budget summary from the slide above, the revenues are 277 million, 474, 219. The expenditures are 279, 317, 215, with a deficit of 1,842,996. So the deficit, I know that appears high, but because of the way that you budget, that does not include, that includes the over $300,000 of educational initiatives fund balance. Like, I don't have a place to put that in the budget. So we're already coming down about 315,000, I believe. But if you look at that deficit, in the last if you look at the last 10 years, 9 of those years, it's less than what was budgeted as a deficit in those prior years. So we're not that far off from where we've been. We usually do, because of conservative budgeting, we usually do better than budgeted. So I think we would recommend that that we could be successful with that budgeted deficit. And I think we'll still do better at the end of the year, so.
Could you remind us how much was the deficit last year?
The deficit that we budgeted for a $2.3 million deficit. And I tried to do, so what I tried to do is I tried to look at spots that we were at like at the end of April. Like we'd say we had spent this much in we had received this much in revenue, we had received this much in expenses in prior years. And then take that as a percentage of what we got for that year in each of those and try to come up with an average and bring them back. But there's really no, I couldn't come up with anything that seemed reasonable. I tried throwing out 1920 and 2021, did it that way, but there are years where, it just took off, and I know we're doing better in earned income tax than we budgeted, and there are a lot of things that come in late in the year for earned income tax that I don't know, that usually we get some pretty good payments on earned income tax at the end of the year, but I don't know what those will be, so it's really hard to predict. I'm about 70% confident that we will have a positive increase. We have an increase in fund balance at the end of the year. That's the best way to say that.
Because we have for previous years, including last year.
Yes. I mean, we've had a $4 million deficit budgeted, and this is going back about 6 years. We had a $4 million deficit budgeted and ended up with a positive fund balance.
I certainly appreciate your efforts to create the RAP rule to help us out with some of that.
RAP.
But it's complicated.
RAP.
Your
Describe it.
attempt to figure out what the what the end of,
Oh,
the
okay.
cloudy fuzzy period that we don't know about based upon previous years' revenue.
I'm sorry. So,
It's a new theory.
That's right, yeah, still unproven.
I'm not getting any awards for math there. Not working. Let's see. Everybody move on?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Yoda?
So you have $500,000 as a pillow for
Yes.
safety.
Pushing, yeah.
And so the 300 and something for the education funding, whatever that was already there.
Yeah.
So it's more like $1 million, right, the deficit, really? Because I don't think you had the cushion last year in the budget. I don't remember having a $500,000 cushion last year.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Remember, you have allowed $500,000 as a cushion.
Right.
Did you have that last year in the budget? I don't
Well, that would be the tax increase so it was, last year was 2%. Increased taxes, like, you voted to increase taxes by 2%. That's like the same thing as that. It's just,
Oh, okay, maybe I misunderstood then. Let me go back to,
that was, you're talking about the budgetary reserve,
um,
the 500,000?
Yeah, the
Oh, yeah, we did not have that last year.
yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, we added that, and so you are correct. So if we were to take that out, it would bring it down almost just to $1 million around. And again, that's for, that's a little bit of cushion for emergencies. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the tax increase.
okay, yeah.
I
So,
apologize.
I mean, that is very comprehensive. So my question is, do you really, the administration, do you really have everything you need requested in this budget? Because we talk about maybe possible initiatives that they could, we want to minimize, the loss, education loss, and increase our test scores. Do we have everything we need for the next year, to tackle this as much as possible? No, it's a loaded question.
That's a good question. We look at budgets and we look at programs, and we look at staffing. It really becomes one of trying to prioritize, like, where the focus is. Anything, a good example is we know that we've talked long about another math specialist at the elementary school. We know that with the increase of EL students, our students have had a need, and we've come to the board several times in a row asking for EL teachers. And I think as we continue to go through this, not just the budget part of the educational process, but the education, there are always places where we would want to, focus and add or make adjustments when we have to. So based on what you have in front of you, we feel pretty confident in that is going to help our students and our district in areas that we have spoken about in terms of need. We spent an awful lot of time talking about math and math scores, the discrepant numbers between one side of the district and the other. We've spent an awful lot of time talking about special education, what our special students with special needs need. And we've also spent a lot of time working hard with our EL population. So I think it tackles a lot of those areas. I would be foolish to say that it will solve all of the problems, but I think it gives us additional resources to put in front of our students in those three particular areas, with regard to reading, with regard to math, and our EL students. And of course, we're constantly looking at safety and security, both the physical and plant structure, the cyber, as well as the cybersecurity, and then the safety of students when they sit in classrooms. How do they feel You know, are they emotionally safe? Are they academically safe? So that, I think what we've put in front of you captures that, but I can't sit here and say that that's a be-all, end-all list. As we navigate through the educational process, we're constantly looking at where do we get better, how do we modify, how do we adapt, and what is it that our students need?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hickey, you had a question?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for this, this is nice, it's easy to read, understandable, so we know where we're heading here. And we're always at this point every year, where that, we never know where that magic number comes in, but where we always have this deficit, and then we unfortunately, we never find out until the end of June or whatever, where we end up. But my question, and I guess, and you can help me with my math here, and I guess it's a matter of the risk reward you want to take. Our current deficit, according to this slide, is $1.8 million. And for every percentage of a tax increase, it is roughly $1.7 million, correct?
Correct.
So if we reduced your proposed tax increase from 2.6 to 2.1, we in effect would be adding another $883,000 to this deficit. So that number would come up to roughly $2.7 million, correct? Which is where we were last year.
Yes.
So, as I'm always looking to cut taxes, as we went down another 5%, we still haven't gotten rid of anything on the table. We're not cutting in millions of dollars from education, so everybody can relax in that regard. But we're keeping that tax increase relatively low, and we're taking a risk of $2.6 million that may or may not come in. In my experience on the board, that every year I've been here, that number has always been north of that, and then we end up just adding to our reserve. My question, I guess, and as I said, I'm basically asking you that if we went down 0.5% from this current budget, we would be risking $2.6 million, which is the same in place as we were last year. I'm just trying to keep the taxes, like right now, it's a proposed 2.6. If we went down 0.5%, now we're at 2.1.
Yes.
Okay. As you know, where I'm getting with my conversation, as we're leading to where we're gonna head. So I just want to make sure that I'm factually correct.
I will say, can I address that?
Oh, sure, please.
I just my thinking on it. So if you look at the tax increases that we're proposing, additional budgeted positions, I think we need to increase that. If we're going to increase add those positions, we should increase the taxes by that. The full-day kindergarten increase is separate and related to implementing full-day kindergarten, and the debt service is separate, related to increasing debt service for the ability to pay for things, construction that we know we're going to need in the future. So if you look at that from a budgeting perspective, last year we increased taxes by 2% to balance the budget. This year, we're only looking at increasing taxes by 0.5% to balance the budget, which is a much lower number for that purpose. And I realize that there are other taxes that are, other increases that are involved in that. But again, I'll bring up the fact that the Act 1 index is 5.3%, and it's 5.3% for a reason. And I just, like, all those other taxes have somewhere to go except for that 0.5%, and that's our way of keeping level with increases from year to year. And I'll say again, we do need that extra money when it comes in at the end of the year, when we are better than we budgeted, because we have summer projects that we need to get taken care of, and we want to be able to put money aside for that. We've got about 3 years worth I wouldn't want to have less than 3 years worth in case we had some really down years, and that could happen. So I think my thought on that process is, and I'm just saying what I'm thinking. You know, you have, but I just want to say that I think that's our tax increase to keep up with inflation, or, you know, so that's why I would not want, I would say that we would not recommend, that Mr. would not, to not do that, but obviously the board should do what the board thinks is right.
Oh, sure, no, and then we make our own decisions. For example, if we said we were, you know, do we really need, and these are, you know, rhetorical questions, do we really need to have add $1.7 billion to our debt service? That's a decision that we have to make. If we cut that in half, down to 8 million, there's the 5% that I was talking about here. If we didn't have full day kindergarten, that would reduce this 0.57%. Obviously, like you said, we have a deficit reduction, that's gonna have to stay, and the budgeted positions at 5.6, that's gonna have to stay. But I mean, then we can decide as a board what we would like to do, or, you know, I mean, there might be other members of this board that says, hey, look, we're only at 2.63%. We can go up to 5.1. Why don't we just, you know, jack it up to 3.5 and really get ahead of the game? As I said, I'm only speaking.
Yeah, I'm just trying to tell you my thinking, our thinking, the administration's thinking on this. So that's.
No, and I appreciate that. Thanks.
Anyone else have questions?
Can you just, Tony, can you just explain again the 1% debt service? I understand what it's for, but I guess I'm wondering why 1%?
Why 1%? Because if I look at the cost of a rent, 1% would get us enough funding to do one of the 2 elementary schools that needs to be, that is on the schedule to be renovated. That would.
Without that, or if we did 0.5%, we couldn't do it. You could have a half, like obviously I don't know when we're gonna have those started, so you could do 0.5% next year, but that gets us in a position where we're also putting some of our money into the debt service fund, so that, say we wanted to borrow more than that, we have money put aside in debt service to smooth out those years where we exceed our transfer into debt service, where our debt service exceeds our transfer into debt service, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
And certainly does not address all possible renovations or future construction.
Not even close.
That's like the minimum we can do at this point.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I just, some money for smoothing, but also to get ready so that we are gonna, you know, when you start talking about the high schools and the second school and whatever else, you end up deciding to do. I think that obviously the 2 elementary schools and the high schools are, well, I don't want to say that you don't have a choice. Obviously you always have a choice, but those are the ones that are most needful at this point.
Ms. Khan has a question, she texted.
Ms. Kant, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
I do. I actually, it's just a kind of a follow-up question from Mr. Becky's question. If Tony could explain to us in regard to this 1% paying off the deficit, I think even last meeting or the last finance meeting, there was a slide where Mr. Rapp showed a graph regarding our ability to borrow over the next, borrowing ability or capability over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So this 1% that could be suggested for the tax increase, how does this affect our, in that projected term, long-term slide for borrowing ability? Is this kind of puts us on that same trajectory of where you are recommending that we need to be able to borrow money in the future to do the renovations that we're discussing or that you just mentioned?
So it puts us on track. I think it's a good starting spot. I can't predict where we're gonna be with timing, because we do have more becoming available in 5 years. So we do have that to consider. So it might be enough to get us where we need to go. But with the high schools, I'm thinking that it won't be, but, that we'll need to add on at some point to that in a few years. 'Cause we're probably talking 5 years till the high schools we're even thinking about spending money on those. But, we want to be prepared, and, you know, those could be rather large borrowings, probably some of the biggest borrowings we've had in a long time.
Thank you.
If that answers your question, I'm sorry.
Yes, it does answer that question. So it starts us on that trajectory and that graph that you showed us.
Yes.
But obviously it's not going to be the sum or the answer to the entire graph that you had presented.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, the last slide.
Linda, Mr. Roosevelt.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Roosevelt.
Mr. Rapp, you're great with the numbers, and this presentation, I think, is really digestible, so it's very much appreciated. Just wanted to echo some of the other comments that were made. And I'm wondering, based upon that, if you do have, perhaps, some of the figures on the past few years of after we got through June and all the final numbers, where did we end up in surplus? Because they were surplus years. We anticipated that there were deficits, but they ended up being surpluses by a little bit, right, due to conservative budgeting.
Yeah.
Do you have those rough surplus numbers of where we were in the past couple of years?
I have the numbers in a spreadsheet. I don't know, I don't have them open or off the top of my head. I did send them out last year.
Yeah.
Up until, obviously I didn't send out last year's, but I did send them out. I can send them out again if.
Yeah, I think, it's helpful looking at all of this, especially understanding because of EITs and some of the other things, we don't really know where we're gonna end up. But as you pointed out, 9 of the past 10 years had higher deficits, but 9 out of the past 10 years also, or at least 5 of the past 10 years also, probably maybe even all 10 years, ended up in.
There was at least 1 year
There's at least one that was.
where we lost, we didn't lose as much as we predicted we would lose, but we lost money. And just as another aside on that, 21-22, the district did have a significant positive fund balance increase.
Right.
But then there was a large transfer to capital reserve.
That's right.
That actually turned the fund balance increase into a negative $12 million deficit.
Right, but that's just where we're planning and we're
Right.
resolving and making sure that there's funding for buildings and
Yes.
projects that we hadn't really, well, there was a little area where we could have done some more help. So
Yes.
I just think it's helpful to see what it turned out as far as surplus from these.
Just so I'm clear, are you asking to know like where we were at this point and then what it ended up being, or are you asking what we were compared to budget?
Be it all three, basically.
Okay.
But the question was, where last year, for example, since we mentioned that, right, we projected a $2.3 million deficit, and we ended up in surplus.
Yes.
I think by maybe 3 to 5.
Well, last year was actually only like a $795,000.
7.5, okay, yeah. So seeing that, I think, going back a couple of years.
Okay.
So seeing those 3 would be even better to see, right, budgeted, estimated, actual, and you have some actual here. That would just.
Okay, I'll just put them together. Probably not the last of Thursday, but
Yeah, no,
because I have to get the rest of the budget.
even if it's available at the upcoming meeting, that's fine.
Okay. Glad.
Thank you. Any more questions on this? On to,
Before we move on to the next slide, I want to address two things. First, to Mr. Tate's question regarding the community services revenue. So that is for things like Adult Swim events, not events, but we have like Adult Swim at our pool. We have lifeguard lessons, swimming lessons.
Okay.
Those types of revenues are what make up community services revenue.
It was just totally foreign to me. I was
So
curious.
that's, and while I had a minute, I looked. And
Thank you.
That's what it covers. And also, I should have addressed this at the beginning. I just want to say thank you to my staff for all the hard work that they've put in on the budget, especially Cheryl Rubonich, who has done a ton of work fixing things, helping me along, helping me get through this. So I want to give a lot of credit to her for all the work that she's done, and the rest of the cabinet team has helped an awful lot. I've been working with principals and assistant principals and coordinators throughout the district since the beginning of this process, and everyone's been a great help and done a great job. So I want to, this is really a large process that takes into account a lot of people and a lot of time, and it's been a very, very rewarding process for myself, and I think that the help that I'm given, the help that we're given to do this, and all the work that everybody puts into it is a great job. And I think when you see that budget book, you'll be pretty impressed by some of the things that we're doing this year. So I just wanted to say that.
thank you. Thank you.
If this is
Great.
rewarding, you're in the right job.
So I want to talk about the 24-25 tax rebate program. I know I talked about this the last time, but I did do a little bit more looking into this. So some of that stuff is the same thing as last year. I'm talking about this last time that we met, where we're talking about the PA property tax rebate maximum increase, the additional rebate increase, and what qualifies you for an additional rebate, and increases in rebates for all income levels. So I believe if you had a 250 rebate last year, it's like 325, all the way up to 650. Was 650 last year. This year will be $1,000 for the state. So yeah, so 250. I'm sorry, 250 is 380 this year, not 330. And then the income to qualify for the rebate increased from 35,000 to 45,000. So that's going to add people who made 45,000 last year that didn't qualify will qualify this year for the state rebate. We're proposing to increase the rebate in 24-25 to 100% of the total PA rebate. So whatever they get from the state, we're recommending that we give to the people who qualify for this rebate. So in conjunction with the state increase, if I took the amount that we've rebated so far this year, which is $25,912.50, that would increase it to $52,900. So if we gave 100% of the state rebate and with the state rebate changes, so that would be a difference of $26,987.50. So that's not very significant when you consider the whole thing. And it's double what we rebated, so I mean that's better for the taxpayers who are getting rebates. But it is below, we budgeted last year $250,000 for this. We have that budgeted again, $250,000. So I think that, that for the people that got a rebate last year, that I think it's a fair increase for them. But I just want to throw in there a caveat that this does not consider the people who made between $35,000 and $45,000 that did not qualify for a rebate last year. But then again, on the other side of that, those people are on the lower end of the rebate. So it's not like they're getting I think the top rebate you can get is $1,500 for if you have the regular rebate and the extra rebate, you get $1,500. There's nobody in that group that's going to be, because of their income level, they're going to be at most 380 or 380 plus half of 380. So I'm too tired to do that mathematically.
Well, I think the rebate program is probably going to reach more people just because it becomes more and more advertised. And because the state increase the dollar amount, it makes it probably a little bit more worth it for individuals to apply, and then that'll make it, because we're equaling it, it certainly makes it more interesting for people to apply. And what's nice about it is it clearly will help cover any tax increases that they're seeing on their real estate. So those people that really need those monies at the lower income level are not going to be impacted as much by any tax increase that we may put together.
So, I mean, that would be a rebate of, that increase of what we were paying last year, which for 250, we were paying 187.50. 380 minus 187.50, that is more than the average increase at that tax increase that we're proposing. So they would actually, people in that area, which is the highest income level, would actually do better with this tax rebate and the tax increase than they did last year.
Correct.
So, or I shouldn't say last year, but then what they expected. Any other questions on this?
Nope.
So where do we go from here? We've provided forecasts for full-day kindergarten to you, so, you know, we've given a lot of information on that. The budget books to be available by May 16th, so we'll have them for you on Thursday at the regular meeting. At that regular meeting, we'd like you to approve the proposed final general fund budget. That just means that it's the budget that we're saying is where we're at right now. It's close to the final, but it's not the final. You have a month to review the budget book and talk to us about any changes. We can, after you get the budget book, we can talk about maybe if we need to schedule another meeting, another one of these meetings, to talk about things and for you to hash out some items if you want. We have a public budget forum scheduled for May 29th at Newtown Middle School at 7 p.m. That gives people the opportunity to come out and ask questions about the budget and a small presentation on the budget. We're hoping to have a final budget approval on June 20th at that meeting, but it does have to be approved by June 30th, 2024.
Thank you.
And that's.
Awesome.
Well, I want to thank you also for printing hard copy for us, because it makes it much easier than just following the, the presentation on there. So, really, thank you. And I have copies for Nikki and Joe. I'll give it to them Thursday. Does anybody have any other questions? Then I call to adjourn this meeting. You good?
London.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Okay.